My name is Heather O'Neill, and this is my brand new book, Daydreams of Angels, which is a collection of stories, which is actually my first collection of short stories. And I see it actually more as sort of a compendium, like these old treasuries of children's stories that we read when we were kids, and it incorporates sort of some fabulesque retellings of old stories and some biblical stories, but it also incorporates like how every family has its own mythology, and those kind of stories that your grandparents tell you become part of your understanding of the world as a child. So there's all these sort of tales that the children's grandfather has told them, which are tall tales and filled with lies and metaphors and sort of these wonderful fabrications of the 1940s. And I mean, they are stories, but they're all sort of linked sort of thematically with a sort of like the physics of the world is the physics of a child. Like there's actually one tale where a child is telling a story, but then he gets called away to have some chocolat chaud, and the characters in the tale must, they're left without their narrator, and they're kind of venturing through this war-torn Europe, only knowing things that a 7-year-old boy might know. So, you know, I wanted to have all these kind of deep philosophical ideas, but coming out of the mouths of children. And, you know, there's a story where Jesus is actually in middle school, and he, you know, in contemporary Montreal, and he's kind of coming into his own ideas, which I found sort of very interesting. And he comes from a similar class and background as me, and so that's one of my favorite tales. My first 2 novels took place exactly on the same corner, like they were across the street from each other. So in these short stories, I've kind of expanded my geographical range. So there's characters, I mean, my geographical range was so tiny before. So there's stories set in other neighborhoods in Montreal, and there's also some that are set in Europe in the 1940s. I wanted to capture the way that our grandparents tell those tales to us, and they're sort of with obvious absences and you know, elaborations and their own sort of the way they misremember things, and the way that children understand these tales as this luminous mythology that becomes their own history. And it's sort of whatever what your parents did when they went to like a dance hall in like the 1970s sort of becomes part of who you are and how you see the world. So I wanted to have the sort of big events of family mythologies, and also the odd little events. Like, I wanted to capture that too, like how for children, like their parents' stories, they're so exciting and full of life and mystery, and they're like some of the greatest novels to children, like these stories that the parents have. Like my daughter too, when I tell her like these tales of growing up in the 80s in Montreal, they're just so magical for her, because those are sort of her own little treasury of family tales, and they take on this electric light, and they're just animated in a different way, like your own peculiar story. So I wanted to kind of capture that sort of excitement of the family narrative.